Greetings, everyone. Well, time at long last for a Blu-ray update. My goodness, it seems like it's been a long time since we've done one of those. Goodness gracious me. Yeah, well, as most of you know, money's been pretty tight since moving, and it's only just recently that I've actually started to get things under control, and I'm finally able to start building the collection again rather than decimating it to pay the bills. Yeah, so slowly starting to get some new additions to the collection, as well as replacing a lot of the stuff that I unfortunately had to sell over the past couple of months. But yeah, things are looking up. So I thought it was high time I treated myself. Damn it. There's a few movies that came out over the course of the, spring and summer and last Christmas and whatnot that I just hadn't got around to seeing, and really wanted to check them out. And, well, there was one in particular that I've had my eye on for a while, because it was a long-awaited return to a franchise that I have enjoyed for a very, very long time, pretty much since I was a kid. One of the original sci-fi franchises, in fact, really the original sci-fi franchises. There were some horror ones over the years, back in the days of the Universal Monsters and whatnot, but there hadn't really been a sci-fi franchise, per se. They've just kind of been some standalone movies, and, every once in a while one would get a few sequels or whatever, but it wasn't really, like, a big phenomenon. This was the first, phenomenon franchise that we ever really got, and, that had all the tie-in merchandise. You had toys and comics, and didn't really have video games because video games didn't exist in the late 60s, early 70s, but, if they did, there would have been video games. So, yeah, now, my feelings on remakes and reboots and such. I always approach them with cautious optimism, shall we say, and more often than not I find myself disappointed. Well, I'm happy to say that in this case, I approached it with cautious optimism. A little less cautious, perhaps, because just about everybody I know whose opinions I respect were all rants and raves about it. Like good rants and good raves about it. Is there such a thing as a bad rave? Anyway, I guess maybe if you OD on ecstasy, that would make it a bad rave. Cricket. Yeah. Anyway, what am I talking about? Well, I'm not going to tell you. Let's just roll the credits and I'll tell you after. Today on the Multimedia Chronicles. Welcome back. Yeah, a little bit rusty. What can I say? It's literally been about 2 months since I filmed a Blu-ray update. Yeah, so pardon the rustiness. Okay, so I am, of course, talking about Rise of the Planet of the Apes. Rise of the Planet of the Apes. Fan-freaking-tastic film. And I say that as someone who normally hates overuse of CG and hates remakes and reboots, but damn, this was a good movie. And I come to this as someone who is a huge fan of the Apes franchise. Let's put this one right there. There we go. So we got the old and the new, both staring at you creepily. Yeah, very, very cool. Now, after the, shall we say, rather disappointing Tim Burton film of 2001, which you'll notice is absent from the collection, I'll get it eventually just for completion's sake, but I'm really not in any big rush. I used to have it on DVD, actually, but it was sold back in the the other Great Purge of 2010. So, yeah. Anyway, I loved Rise of the Planet of the Apes. I was just completely sucked into it, and I thought it was fantastic. You got some of the top talents in the business doing the effects. You got Weta Workshop, Lord of the Rings people. I swear, Weta Workshop is the new ILM. I honestly think that they've surpassed ILM for special effects now. So the groundwork that ILM laid back in the 70s and 80s Weta Workshop has taken the ball and just run with it. I mean, I have yet to see something that they've produced, like, effects for, that I'm disappointed by. I mean, even frickin' Black Sheep, the one about the killer sheep, had amazing effects. Well, Rise of the Planet of the Apes is no exception, and speaking of Weta Workshop and Lord of the Rings, we actually have Andy Serkis in the role of Caesar, doing all the mocap and performance and the voice for Caesar. So, very cool stuff. Now, one of the things that I was curious about was a lot of people were saying, like, oh yeah, they finally gone back and done the origin right. Now, for those who are unfamiliar, there's going to be some spoilers here, by the way, so be warned if you're not overly familiar with the Apes franchise and want to keep things fresh for yourself. The thing about the original Planet of the Apes is it has a couple of different origin stories to it. The first time we really hear about the origin in any detail, and sort of the details of how things got to the way they are, was actually in the third movie, where you have Cornelius telling the story of how the apes were oppressed and enslaved and such, and how they had heightened intelligence and whatnot, but they were basically slave labor until one ape named Aldo actually rose up against his captors and said no to some request and basically stood up to them. And that was the beginning of the ape revolution, which ultimately resulted in the apes taking over. So, the following film, so that was in Escape from the Planet of the Apes, which is the third film. Actually, let's go right back. So you had the first two movies. You had the first movie where Charlton Heston and his crew crash land on the planet. The apes have taken over, and they're like, "What the hell's going on?" There's apes everywhere. Then the second movie kind of continues on from the end of the first one and culminates in the destruction of the world. The world is blown up by the end of the second movie. That is the end of that timeline. It's done. The world has come to an end. Completely, totally, absolutely, without any, there's just no ifs, ands, or buts about it. So the third one, we find out that Cornelius and Zira, I believe it's been a while since I've watched them, but Cornelius and Zira actually escaped shortly before the explosion. Now, the popular theory is the nuclear explosion that annihilated the world actually sent them, created a rip in the fabric of space and time and sent them hurtling back in time to before the apes took over, well before the apes took over, basically to modern day at the time, which would have been the early, or I guess mid-70s, thereabouts. And essentially, in doing so, screwed up their own history and created an alternate timeline. If you look in the book that comes with the big Blu-ray set, they actually have, I can show you here, they actually have a big timeline that you can check out. Yeah, actually right here. That's the timeline. This shows you all the divergent timelines in the continuity of the original series. So, we get to, so that's Escape from the Planet of the Apes, where in conversation with one of the human characters, Cornelius is basically telling the story as he understands it, and how it happened in the timeline that he came from. Basically, that this ape named Aldo stood up to his human masters, and that was the beginning of the revolution. So then we get to the fourth movie, Conquest of the Planet of the Apes, which shows the apes being oppressed by humans and such, and we just kind of naturally assume going in that, okay, we're actually going to see that sequence of events play out. And it does, kind of, but the ape that actually stands up and says no to their is actually a female ape. So I kind of mixed up my thoughts there and it came out sideways. Is actually a female ape character who I can't remember. And it's actually the first word that she speaks. Throughout the movie, Caesar is the only ape that can actually speak because he's the direct offspring of Cornelius and Zira, so he has that heightened intelligence DNA. The other apes are still kind of halfway between primitive and heightened intelligence. They're getting there, but not quite. They're intelligent enough to be able to do menial tasks and essentially be slave labor and whatnot, but not enough to, kind of speak and think and reason, much like how Caesar does. So, it's actually kind of Caesar's girlfriend who stands up to their human captors and says no. So at that point, those who've been paying attention are kind of scratching their heads. It's like, well, that's not how it's supposed to happen. And then suddenly, light bulb goes off. It's like, this is an alternate timeline. When they went back in time, they changed history and created an alternate timeline. So then the fifth movie, which kind of brings things full circle, which basically shows the aftermath of conquest and the seeds of the civilization that we then see in full swing back in the first movie. You see kind of how things are playing out and just the sequence of events of how it's going to lead up to what we've already seen. However, it's not going to be exactly what we've already seen because things are different. And to further add to the confusion, in Battle for the Planet of the Apes, which is the fifth and final movie of the original 5-movie cycle, we have a character named Aldo. He's one of the guerrilla generals. But it's not the same Aldo who was referred to in Escape. It just gets... it's so confusing. So, which brings us back to Rise. 10 minutes later. Yeah, so when I heard that they had gone back to the origin story, I was thinking like, oh, maybe they're actually going to tell the real origin story. Because from what everybody was telling me, it sounded like, yeah, this one is actually in continuity with the original franchise. And it could very well be, in some sense. But honestly, it's hard to say, because I mean, I think you can shoehorn it into the continuity by having yet another timeline that kind of offshoots from there. But more than anything, I think it's really a reboot, but a respectful reboot that actually pays homage to a lot of the classic little moments. So you do have an ape standing up to his human captors and saying no, but it is not Aldo. It is not Caesar's girlfriend. No, this time it's actually Caesar himself. And because that is such a historic moment, regardless of who says it, in the original series, they really gave it some serious weight and emotional resonance in Rise. That's, I think it was great having Caesar say the line. And quite frankly, I was surprised that he didn't in the original. Although I guess it kind of fits in the original. Anyway, I could go on and on and on about it, but I won't. But yeah, I think they did a great job. There's a lot of little nods to the original movies in there that longtime fans like myself are going to pick up on pretty much instantly. There's a few other kind of hidden Easter eggs that if you watch the extras, they'll point out to you. But most of the big ones you're gonna recognize right off the bat, like recognizing some of the famous lines and whatnot that are put in there, like "Get your hands off me, you damn dirty ape," and Caesar saying no, and there's a lot of other little moments in there too that I can't remember. But the thing that just struck me about it was just the emotional power of the film, just as a film. I mean, I was moved to tears in parts, and I really did not expect that kind of reaction. But it was very, very well done and very just beautifully acted. Like, huge tip of the hat to Andy Serkis, because I mean, he performed the whole thing in mocap with facial expressions and body language, and then that was then translated over to the digital character of Caesar, and it's fantastic. I mean, it's easily a digital performance to rival his work as Gollum. He's essentially competing with himself, because I mean, let's face it, Andy Serkis is the master of mocap performances. I don't know anybody who does it better than him, and everything I've seen him do for those types of things, I mean, the digital characters that he helps create through his body performance and facial expression performance, it's always fantastic. I mean, check out another one if you want to check out some of his work is Gollum and Lord of the Rings, obviously, but also Enslaved, Journey to the West, which was the video game from a couple years ago. He plays Monkey, who's the main character in that, and again, a fantastic, compelling performance. I mean, as iffy as some of the gameplay was, I mean, that game is worth it just for the sumptuous graphics, beautiful digital characters and motion capture and everything, fantastic acting, some of the best voice acting I think I've ever heard in a video game. I mean, the performances in it are just fantastic. I mean, it just really is a cinematic experience that you play. Yeah, so check out Enslaved. You can probably find it pretty cheap now because it's a couple of years old. So, yeah, essentially, I cannot possibly gush about Rise of the Planet of the Apes enough. And my understanding is it did quite well. I don't know anybody who didn't like it. And that's people who were new to the franchise or people who were, like me, longtime fans. So here's hoping that they continue it, because in watching the extras, it is clear that they intend this to be the start of a new Planet of the Apes series. And they've already, I mean, even in this one, they planted the seeds for future films. Like, for example, there's a reference to a space mission being lost in space. Like, they lost contact with them, and that's basically setting things up for the Icarus, the spaceship from the original first film, being lost out there in space and coming back, 100 years later, or however long, and finding the apes taken over. Yeah, so if you've been kind of trepidatious about checking out Rise of the Planet of the Apes because you're a longtime fan of the original and you don't want to sort of taint that experience, look how many times we've revisited the Planet of the Apes over the years, and then we'll just pretend the Tim Burton one's in there somewhere. You got the original movies, which most people consider the definitive thing. Well, and they are. I mean, that's where it all started. Then you got the live-action TV series, which I suppose you might be able to shoehorn into the movie continuity somewhat. It does make reference to some of the movie elements, but really it's its own thing. And then you got the animated series, Return to the Planet of the Apes, which basically takes elements from all the continuities. Well, not that one, obviously, because it didn't exist yet, but you know what I mean, the movies and the TV show, and then adds its own mythology on top of that. And now we've got the new one. So, yeah, honestly, there has yet to be one that actually adapts the original Pierre Boulle novel faithfully. To be perfectly honest, as much as people are going to hate this, the Tim Burton one, I think, was the closest to the novel out of all the ones we've seen so far. Yeah, I guess a good example of how sticking close to the novel isn't always a good idea if you're going to do a screen adaptation. I mean, sometimes a certain license has to be taken just because of the difference in medium. But yeah, I mean, this is basically rekindled my interest in the Apes franchise, and I will probably be sitting down and marathoning all of this stuff in the very near future. Yeah, I actually still haven't watched these two all the way through yet, so a little more incentive to do so. Alrighty, so Rise of the Planet of the Apes, a very welcome addition to the Blu-ray collection. Check it out if you haven't already, and I will talk to you next time. Until then, thanks for watching, and sayonara. What am I doing? Rusty or what? I guess I should give you a look at the actual contents here, shouldn't I? So, okay, so we got the nice snazzy slipcover. It's very pretty. It's actually kind of similar to the Crow slipcover. It's got a similar texture to it. It's kind of a matte finish, and you can see the shininess of the logo, and it's all raised, and there's slight embossing there. Unfortunately, you might be able to see the the price tag was right on there, and that's about as much as I could get it removed. It kind of pisses me off. But anyway, let's take a look here. So we open her up, and it's the same thing inside, except you actually get a list of contents here. Let's go over some contents real quick. It is a 50 gig dual layer disc. Being a new release and mostly digital, needless to say, this looks pretty damn good. I really did not see any problems with the picture. So we got an AVC encode at 26 megabits per second, 105 minutes running time, 2.35 to 1, panoramic widescreen. Alright, panoramic. Panoramic is widescreen in French. It's panoramique. Yes. So, yeah. It is D-Box motion enabled, which the originals are as well. So you can actually turn the whole dang Apes franchise, at least the movies anyway, into a series of ride films if you really want to. So here we have, it's a 2-disc set basically. Just you got, disc 1 is the Blu-ray with all the Blu-ray goodies. Disc 2 is the DVD. It's also the digital copy. So they actually put them both on the one disc, which is kind of nice. Saves discs. So anyway, in terms of the extras, you've got 11 deleted scenes, the genius of Andy Serkis, which is basically just all about his performance and sort of his philosophy with motion capture and how he's helped to kind of revolutionize it as a new type of performance. Scene breakdown, a new generation of apes, breaking motion capture boundaries, the great apes, mythology of the apes, composing the score with Patrick Doyle, audio commentaries, plural, by director and writers, and character concept art gallery. Disc 2, you basically got the movie in standard def and the digital copy, and it doesn't look like there's any extras on there. And there you have it. And then to get a look at the package, so we got the activation code for the thing. Don't bother pausing and trying to read it. It's under my fingers. And the 2 discs. Yeah, hold it. Yeah, well, no. Yeah. Oh. Yeah. There we go. Sort of. There. So, standard DVD version and digital copy and Blu-ray with all the goodies. And there you have it. So, Rise of the Planet of the Apes. I actually got this on sale. One of the reasons I picked it up was because it was on sale for $15, brand new, factory sealed. I think my discount brought it down to like $12.50 thereabouts, something like that. So, not a bad deal at all. Definitely got some solid entertainment value out of that. Alrighty, that is definitely it from me to you for now. So until next time, thanks for watching, and sayonara again.